Want your boss to put some real action behind the rhetoric when they talk about making your workplace more inclusive? Find out how to hold their feet to the fire to demand diversity on the Diversity Dude podcast with Reg Clark.
So I am so ready to keep this conversation moving. Today, what I want to talk about is so many times we talk about having the uncomfortable conversation. If you talk to anybody in diversity and inclusion, one of the things they say is that in order to advance diversity and inclusion, you have to be comfortable having the uncomfortable conversation. But one of the things that I've noticed over time is that communication has somewhat become unilateral and not bilateral. We always talk about in order for communication to be effective, both sides have to speak and be heard, as well as listen to the other side. So what I want to talk about now is that crucial conversation, not the comfortable conversation, but the crucial conversation happens when someone in leadership or authority comes to an individual who may be a person of color, who may be a female, who may be of some group that is underrepresented or marginalized. Let's just be honest. There are groups out there that continue to be marginalized, and they're not always Black people. There are many other groups that come across marginalized, even right down to religion and parent status, being a single parent, family status, being a single parent. So I wanted to set that up because this is important. I wanted everyone to see themselves engaged in this conversation or impacted by this idea of the crucial conversation. And the crucial conversations look like this. Someone in a position of power or authority comes to an individual and says, "Hey, I want to know your thoughts about X." You can fill in the blank with a lot of different things. And then not only do they say they want to know your thoughts, but they seemingly give you a permission to be candid, to be honest, quote unquote, off the record, that you can just speak. And the idea behind that, sometimes, in my opinion, is that an individual, an employee, may be someone who's kind of to themselves. There are a lot of people that come to work to keep their head down. They do what they have to do. They're playing the game. They're doing what they need to do to be successful in that space. And others are looking around going, I wonder what this person really thinks. What's really on this individual's mind? And before I get further into it, I'm going to tell you something my mom used to tell me all the time. My mom used to say, not everybody needs to know what you know, right? So when part of diversity and inclusion, what we teach is being able to identify with others. One of the things that prevents inclusion is when people have a fear of something, when they feel like there's not and stop me if you heard this before, there's not a cultural fit. So when people in authority are asking those questions about, I want to know your real thoughts. You can be candid with me. You can be honest with me. First thing that comes to my mind is, from all the Law and Order shows, is the Miranda warning. Anything you say can and will be held against you. So that conversation begins, and they're saying, hey, just be candid, be honest. Do you feel like this environment is racist? Do you feel like this environment is sexist? Do you feel like this environment provides an opportunity for all people to get ahead? All the questions that, in my mind, if they have to ask a question, then they already know that there's an issue there. They know that there's a problem there. And in my opinion, they're looking for confirmation that somebody else is feeling that, somebody else understands that. Is that good or bad? My fear, from my experience in talking and coaching a lot of managers, with coaching a lot of employees, is that individuals tend to see that honesty is a problem. It's not something that they were fully ready for. So if someone says, hey, do you think that this place is racist? if somebody was to go with their gut instinct and they truly felt that, they would be like, yes. And then they could probably rattle off about 10 different examples to support that. You would think that would lead to change, but 9 times out of 10, that might lead, and that's an arbitrary figure right there. 90% is an arbitrary figure. But a lot of times, what that leads is the person who was invited to speak candidly is now ostracized. They were asked their opinion. That opinion may have been too strong. It may not have been to the liking. The reason for even engaging in that conversation may have been less than authentic from the person asking the question. It may be more of a confirmation. I thought that you thought this way. I thought that you were that type of person. I thought that you were disgruntled. I thought that you were unhappy. So now all of these things are being attributed to the individual who was invited to ask the question. And so then what happens is the follow-up is again feeling singled out, feeling left out. And now the narrative is changed to be this individual feels that this corporation is not fill in the blank again. And again, I want to leave that blank very broad and very wide so that individuals that listen can fill in the blank for themselves. Make it personal to you and to who you are and your experiences and what's happened in your career. And tell me whether or not you feel like there's some validity to this idea that you're just minding your own business one day and somebody comes and say, hey, I want to know what you think. So I want to talk about some ways that you can deal with those questions when they come up. When those questions come up and they ask you for your candid feedback, your honest assessment, I think it's personally okay to respectfully say why. Is there an issue? Is there a problem? Has something come up that this is called for a conversation on that? Will we be having a broader conversation in a team setting? I think it's okay to say those type of things without intimating that you're afraid to have the conversation, but you just really want to know earnestly why. Is this a conversation meant to build, or is this just a personal thing where my feelings or my input is being requested? Second thing, if you're asked a question, do you feel this place is X? Fill in the blank there. It's okay to say, let me think about it. Even though you may feel like you have a sincere answer, you have a very visceral reaction, it's okay to say, let me think about it. In other words, what you're saying is, let me get my thoughts together. Let me put a good spin on this, because I don't think a lot of times, and I feel this strongly, that when people are asking for your opinion, that they're really ready for it, or maybe that they even really want it sincerely. So I think it's a dance that we do. I think it's a conversation that you do on the edges. So when someone asks you, do you feel like this place is blank? It's okay to say, where's this coming from? I've never voiced it before, or I'm very curious as to, the purpose of this conversation. Also look for other feedback mechanisms that your organization may have. If they do employee engagement surveys, if there are suggestion boxes or employee feedback boxes or loops, to ask about that data, that information, and where does it come from, and what's being done with that information. Always, and I've said this before in previous podcasts, never feel like you have to be the voice for a group unless you happen to be in a business resource group or an employee resource group and you're a leader or you're the voice of that group. Never as an individual feel like you have to be the voice for an entire group of people. It's impossible. Whenever possible, having these conversations, talk about your feelings, but be comfortable. And if this puts you in an uncomfortable light, you should feel free to say, I don't feel comfortable talking about this, or in this space, I think this would be better as a group conversation. I think this would be better as a town hall or some larger type of feedback, because your experience is yours, and nobody can actually force you to share your experiences, your feelings. If you want to remain generic and kind of keep yourself out of the fray, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So when you get down to the crucial conversation and it's time to have the crucial conversation, ask yourself, do you feel comfortable? Do you feel comfortable with the person asking the questions? Do you feel like you have a sense of where that person is coming from by asking the question? Is it going to be, again, held against you for sharing your honest experience, for you being candid, even though you were invited to be candid? Or is this an individual who is an authentic ally? And we talked about that in previous podcasts too. So I think I'm going to pay the meter and park it right there until the next time.
Tune in each week as Reg Clark shows you how to demand and implement diversity and inclusion at your job. To hear more, check out his previous shows on ShelettaMakesMeLaugh.com.